Boom!
Boom. All right, here we go. Beautiful. Hello, and welcome to the Rock Metal Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris. On my left-hand side today is my right-hand man, Gabriel. Okay. Today on the Rock Metal Podcast, we have Stellar Death. They've got a new album called Fragments of Light, which is going to be released on what I have is January 8th, 2021. Is that right, boys?
That is correct.
Correct.
All right. And so right now I'm being joined by Matt and Scott. They're going to share some more information about this record release, a couple of tracks that have already been released, as well as what they've been up to so far this year. So, boys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having us on.
Yeah, absolutely great to have you guys on. I always dig the instrumental stuff, especially when it's not too terribly flashy, just showing us that you can play or something, but actually telling us a story. And a couple of the tracks that we have to chat about today look like, or especially anyway, one of them looks like there's a story. The Astronomer. Is this a protagonist in a story, or am I digging too deep into the titles?
Well, the Astronomer is the first track on this album. And the whole project for us, Stellar Death, is new. We just started it a year ago. And the Astronomer was actually the first song all in one session. And we were kind of centering some of the themes around space. Like the whole album is based on the cosmos and astronomy and space. So it seemed appropriate to kick off the album with a song called The Astronomer, because as we write and contemplate the cosmos and space, we do it from a human perspective. The Astronomer kind of is that recognition that, you know, we're looking out into these different themes in the universe, but we're doing it from, you know, a human kind of mindset. At least that was my sort of take, Matt. I don't know if you had different thoughts, but that was kind of how
No,
No,
that's exactly it. I mean, Scott nailed it. I think it's like, again, with it being sort of the first track, it's sort of the start of the journey. Like you're looking out, and as you embark on the journey of the album itself, you know, that is the overall starting point. You as an astronomer, you know, traversing out into the cosmos, and you know, the rest of the tune sort of take flight from that point.
Quite literally take flight from that point.
Exactly.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. You know, looking at almost anything scientific, it has to be filtered through our own human perceptions. Are you looking at that as maybe a flawed argument, or is there not even really an argument at all? It's just, hey, you know, you're the astronomer looking out into this journey that we're going to be taking you on.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it kind of goes along with the whole concept of like the instrumental music too, in the sense it's like it's such subject to interpretation. You know, I think it you know, there's like sort of a story, a theme for us, but it definitely, you know, allows for interpretation, and we don't get too literal. I don't think with a lot of the songs in and of themselves. We want people to have their own journey with us, providing sort of like a, you know, a canvas, if you will, to get them on the way.
Okay,
yeah, that's also kind of the cinematic quality that we're shooting for. We're trying to write music in a way that is almost like a soundtrack, yet there's no movie. So the movie really is in the listen. But again, the astronomer piece is just the recognition that as we're contemplating these themes, it's from our own human perspective. I wouldn't, at least from my view, an argument per se in that, more recognition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting there, soundtrack to a movie, and this has happened before on the show where somebody says, you know, I took some movies that I really liked, I put them on mute, and I said, what if I were to create the soundtrack to this movie? And it's happened before. It's very interesting. Is that something that you guys may have done or have thought of something in particular, like, say, 2001: A Space Odyssey or Star Wars, Mandalorian, or I guess, how did you guys come up with this concept to have everything space related, and I guess, and instrumental as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the whole project Stellar Death started a year ago when I came across an article that said stellar death shines the brightest light in the universe. There was some event that occurred where a star like light years away died essentially, but when stars do die, they emanate this really intense bright light, which is brighter than our own sun will ever emit over its lifetime. And so I was sort of fascinated by that idea. And, Matt and I have talked about these kinds of things before, no doubt over beers or coffee or whatever. But, you know, it's it was just an idea of there's so much activity that's occurring.
Cool.
We've been embracing like synthetic music, like software drums, synths, all this keyboard stuff, because we play in another band called Brave, which is very organic. It's rock music. We get together and jam, but this is more, any sound that we can get and capture is on the table to possibly use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is you mentioned, a bit of a rock band. This instrumental stuff, I don't know if you got to consider it heavy, but I think it kind of gets a little heavy, especially at times later on towards, what is it, about like the 5-minute mark or so of the Astronomer starts to get pretty heavy.
Yeah, we come from a metal background, I would say, for sure. I mean, I also play in While Heaven Wept, which, is like an epic metal band. And I mean, we've just been doing this stuff for years, and I think that there was also to some extent an intentional leaning toward like death metal drumming anyway. I've just always been a fan of that style, and the software we use, there's a vast like library of beats and stuff that we were just throwing together and riffing on. Matt primarily, like on the Astronomer, we sat there, drew up some beats, and Matt was just riffing on it, and it just worked, kind of gelled together.
Yeah, it's interesting you raise that, because it's like, I think this project has been great in the sense that it's allowed for us to like really draw from all of our influences, and that we come from a metal background, but we like cinematic music, we like Dead Can Dance, we like ethereal ambient music. There's other genres and influences that we have that hopefully in the future we'll be able to tap into. But I think the fact that you are doing something instrumental, you're not locked into any sort of like typical song structure, or the need to have lyrics, or you're sort of hampered by a vocalist that maybe you can't necessarily change so easily. That allows for us to do whatever we want, which was great. And I think that the theme that we have with respect to space and all that, and sort of like the chaos, the quiet, the different aspects of what's happening in our lives and all that, I think allows the music to sort of mimic that in a way. So it was definitely freeing in that regard to be able to do whatever we wanted musically, especially as it relates to like what Scott was saying, getting into like some of our roots of heavier music, which I haven't really listened to heavy music in a in a long time, but it was kind of it was good in the sense that like to go back to those roots.
Mm-hmm. Which it kind of takes me to another question. When I think of instrumental music, usually, or maybe not usually, but like Steve Vai said, there's something that I'm going for, or Joe Satriani said, there's something I'm going for, or and maybe it's just oftentimes guitar players say, there's something I'm going for, that I want to do something that's different what everybody else is doing at the time. And as you mentioned, you don't need to be locked into a particular song structure, like a pop song structure, for example. Like, okay, this is a verse, this is a chorus, this is go back to the verse or whatever. With regard to the space theme, was there something in particular, though, that you guys were looking to do, looking to make the listener maybe feel in a particular way?
You want to go, Scott?
Yeah, I don't know if For me, I've always struggled to write intentionally like that, where you have a concept or a mood first. For me, I think it comes out naturally and the way it does. And then as I kind of reflect on it, I try to understand what it meant. So, although with this album in particular, the way that it evolved, back to your earlier point, it almost does kind of tell a story, because one of the last songs on the album, called Critical Mass, is almost, in my mind, the song where like a star would explode or become supernova, and then Afterglow is the light after that. So we didn't really plot it out necessarily, but it kind of came out naturally that way. But with regard to like Steve Vai and all those guys who are looking at their own work and saying that they want to do things in a different direction, for me anyway, with this project, I didn't really consider any other music or bands. It just was happening the way it was happening, and that was it. I had no idea how it might fit into the greater scheme of music and genres and things like that.
Mm-hmm. The funny thing is, because looking at it from my perspective, this whole thing seems incredibly orchestrated. The fact that you guys started it like a year ago, and we've got this instrumental music with so many varying textures, especially coming from two guitar players. I guess it seemed so much like you guys said, "Okay, this is what we're gonna do," and bam, you went ahead and executed it exactly to plan. But I guess just like how the cosmos unfolds, it's a pretty happy accident.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, I totally agree with what Scott was saying. It's everything sort of happened organically. I think it's also like, just what you're ingesting in terms of just other content, other media at the time, and how that sort of influences. It wasn't like we sat down, watched Interstellar, and said, "Hey, let's write some music to that movie." It was more like, "Yeah, I watched that movie on a loop. I watched, read comic books. We're nerds." So, so as a result of that. It sort of seeps into and helps sort of have the music come out, I think, organically, and just where we're at that point in time. And I think what also helped was that, we were able to do this, just the two of us, and we were sort of in rapid succession writing the songs, and we were able to keep to the themes and the vibe of everything, over the course of a couple months. So I think there's that consistency with that, when it's, I think, a little more challenging when you have a broader band and pulling in from lots of different input and thoughts and all that. I think the two of us had a very consistent sort of, overall vibe of what we were trying to do here. So it helped in that regard. So bigger bands are they're just hard to deal with.
Absolutely.
I know, especially those drummers.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding.
And all their girlfriends. Another track that you mentioned was Critical Mass, and I know that we wanted to chat about Critical Mass, and something that I'm noticing is it's also one of the longer songs on the album. So I guess take us through this track and the build-up to this track, and it always seems to me like it would be hard to write a 10-minute song, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was easier to write a 10-minute song, but I kind of want to hear from you guys what went into crafting almost this culmination for the record.
Yeah, Matt, you pretty much kicked that one off.
Yeah.
You want to
discuss
sure. How you...
I mean, I think, it started off innocently enough, just sort of like noodling on some ideas. And like, as it, had that initial theme in the very first set of riffs. And it was like, how can we like take that and evolve from it, and ultimately, have a song that sort of bookends that overall theme. And as you're sort of like exploring the theme itself and wanting to change the dynamics, as you listen to the song, you have this very tense build up that goes into this more ethereal orchestration that's really good in terms of just bringing the audience down into just sort of like a more calm sense, and then you build up this tension again into like these parts that are really probably like I think it's really the heaviest stuff on the album. It might be the heaviest music I think I've ever been a part of in terms of writing. and then it ends on the overall theme. And the more we were just having it, we were compiling everything and working on the song, it made a lot of sense in what Scott was describing in terms of like the actual the scope of the song being sort of like that's supernova concept, just everything building up to that climax, and then the afterglow, being a song that we had been working on. And it's like, wow, that's like the perfect way to to sort of end the album in terms of these ideas.
Yeah, Matt, something you're saying is some of the heaviest music that you've ever been a part of.
Yeah.
What's that like? Is it kind of out of body in a way? Like, are you comfortable writing it? Did you like, I guess maybe just take us through that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's, I've been in a variety of other bands where, the like death metal bands and, thrashy kind of bands and all that. And when I say heavy, I'm not saying like, it's tuned down to B and it's just someone screaming over it. It was more of just how that, I forget the specific minute marker or whatever, but when you had like the only actual words or spoken word on the album that goes into that riff on Critical Mass. It's just the way that everything builds to that, and then when it hits you, it's just like, oh my god, it's insane. And it's just, just to have that, it's awesome. It's one of the songs that I don't know, just as I look at like over the course of like my career in music, not career, but just working in with music or whatever, it's just a song that I keep coming back to, and it's just so proud of like what Scott and I were able to accomplish in terms of the whole epicness of it, and the way it just builds into something that's just really that I want to keep on listening over and over and over again. Sometimes you write stuff and you're like, yeah, it's cool, I wrote it, and you just put it to the side and move on to the next thing you want to write or explore, and it's just, and actually it's true of the whole album. I just keep coming back and wanting to listen to it.
Okay, very cool stuff. Now, something that kind of struck me about this particular record is you guys started writing it at this point in time about a year ago. Has the events of this year, COVID in particular, delayed what you guys were then going to do, or has it kind of been a blessing in disguise? It gave you guys more time to work on this particular project?
Well, it's kind of strange because, we're pretty much in a quarantine state. Like, I haven't actually hung out with Matt or jammed together in what, 7 months? Yeah, it's been a long time. So the second half of this album was done pretty much in isolation, where Matt would send riffs, through like a drive, and then I would bring them into the master file. We also, I should note, Ben Kelly is the bass player in our band Brave, who did all the bass work for this album as well. Real solid player, has good tone, and he would send his files, through the internet. And
You still there, Scott?
Scotty!
We're losing you, Scott.
Not maybe intentionally, but it's got to be in there,
I think so. We lost you a bit there. Would you mind repeating the last little bit that you said?
Yeah, I was just saying we may have lost Matt. Is he still on?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. So again, like the fact that we were with this project, we're embracing technology and getting into instruments that are basically synthetic keys and all that, worked well in like the COVID environment, because we can do all this stuff while at a distance and while operating kind of in isolation. Again, the second half of the album was held, mixed, and mastered pretty much like by myself, but sending reference tracks back over to Matt to make adjustments.
Okay. Now, if I remember correctly, you mentioned that Ben did the bass on the record. Was he entirely remote as well?
Yeah, we never got together with Ben to do anything. We would just send him the tracks. We're all in the Washington, D.C. area. We're in Maryland, and Ben's over in Virginia. So, yeah, we never got together, but he would lay down tracks, send it our way. We might have minor thoughts on it, and then he would send, revise and resend. So, doing everything through like telework, if you will.
Well, and the thing is, you know, in today's age, even before this, the funny thing is, a lot of bands were saying we thought everything was online already anyway, and now this has kind of introduced some challenges. So, you know, being able to record guitar tracks at home and send it off to the studio halfway around the world to get reamped. I mean, that's kind of the way things I think are going. Did you guys do something like that, or did you, like, the guitar tones that were recorded, that's what's on the record, you guys had handled the mixing, mastering?
Yeah, we did everything in-house. So the guitars, actually Matt did send some guitars that were kind of like the raw tracks that I applied some different amps and distortions to at my place. But yeah, everything that we did, because we're operating from like home studios, we're able to pretty easily.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was like sort of the other aspect of like the project, which was so great, is that because we both have our home studios, it gave us an opportunity to really explore different unique sounds that we haven't typically, you know, ventured into in the other bands that we've been in. Like, there's a lot of like, you know, ethereal ambient sounds that you might actually think are keyboards on the album that are actually guitar, that, you know, gives us an opportunity to really explore some of those sort of like drony atmospheric sounds that, you know, bands like Hammock and things of that you know, that like to like definitely explore and factor into the music.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. Are you guys going to take some of that then back your bands, or do you think this is like, it's going to be its own thing? This is Stellar Death, baby.
Yeah, I think that hopefully we can keep this within this project. It's hard to say. I mean, we still play and write and Brave, but that's more of a live kind of feel in a way, where hopefully we'll get together soon. It's been over a year since we've last jammed and had a show. Although there is some stuff in the works too that does kind of lean in the post direction, post rock or whatever, but with vocal. But I think that there is something that's kind of exclusive to Stellar Death, which is a lot of the like really cinematic qualities and obviously the instrumental piece of it. It's hard to say though, you know, what may transfer over, but I think that, you know, when I'm looking at this project in particular, I feel like I'm in a different mindset anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Now, I guess since you guys can't get together to play shows, I guess what kind of things have you guys been doing or plan on doing for the EP, like live streams or playthrough videos or anything like that?
Yeah, at this point, we're out for reviews, getting it on playlists and things like that. In terms of our own the promotion, I think is always my weak spot, you know. In terms of doing, you know, like play. Matt, we should maybe.
Oh, still there, Scott?
Scotty.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of getting, you know, it's like an interesting thing to be in. You know, we've been in bands for so long, and then to start a new project from the ground up, like entirely building it from scratch. It's a fun but interesting kind of predicament to be in, because we don't have like a baseline fan base, building it sort of one at a time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, boys, I believe we've chatted about everything. We chatted about the Astronomer. We chatted about Critical Mass. We chatted about Fragments of Light, production. We chatted about coronavirus to an extent. What your guys' plans are. And we didn't chat about your favorite kind of pizza, but I mean, I guess we could always throw that one in there. And, you know, one of the things that I was really curious about was, because I'm a guitar player myself, and when I saw, oh no, two guitar players came together to make something, it's going to be, I don't know, god-awful. It's like a Pac-Man machine that got kicked over, or who knows what, right? But you guys did an incredible job creating something that sounds... Pizza! Like I'm reminded of like Dream Theater. You know, like it's like a full band. You guys did a great job.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I think most bands should only consist of guitar players. You know, bass players, drummers, it just get in the way. You know, I think the best drummers are those that are like former guitar players. And Scott does a great job of like thinking about how the drums can like elevate and take the riffs to different places. So I think, yeah, I don't know. I think Stellar Death is where it's at. I'm not sure about the other bands, Scott. I think we're stuck with this. Not going back.
There you go, man.
All right, beautiful. Well, unless there's anything you guys wanted to bring up or mention that I did not ask, I just wanted to thank you for coming on to the Rock Metal Podcast today.
No, we appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. We appreciate it.
Yep.
He chose again.
Really? All right, go ahead and hit stop, please, sweetie.